In 1941, Orson Welles made Citizen Kane. Critics called it the greatest film ever made. He was 25. That same year, Walt Disney had already gone bankrupt twice, been fired, been rejected 300 times. One of these men died worth $5 billion. The other died alone, in debt, unfinished. This video is about the 5 decisions that explain why. Same country, same era, same starting point, nothing. Welles grew up in a boarding house after both parents died. Disney grew up on a Missouri farm with no running water, no connections, no inheritance, no safety net. By every measure, these two men began in the same place. The story of how they ended in completely different worlds is the story of 5 decisions most people never make. Every logic says Welles should have won, recognized as a genius at 10, on the cover of Time magazine at 22. When he walked into Hollywood, studios gave him something no director had ever received: complete creative control, no oversight, no interference. Disney, that same year, was negotiating with creditors after his second bankruptcy. But here is what almost no one tells you about Welles. That contract, the one giving him complete creative control, also gave the studio complete ownership of everything. Welles kept the art, the studio kept the asset. In that single clause, buried in a contract he signed at 25, Welles made the decision that would define his entire life. He just didn't know it yet. This is the first decision, not whether to create, whether to own what you create. Disney and Welles both created. Only one understood that creating and owning are 2 completely different wars, and that you have to win both. Most people from zero spend their entire lives winning the first war and losing the second one without knowing it existed. Disney's first studio collapsed in 1921. He lost everything. His second venture, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, became a hit. Then Universal Studios took the character, legally. Disney had signed over the rights without fully realizing it. He lost Oswald, his entire team, and his income in a single afternoon. Most people in that position never recover. Disney did something different. He studied the contract. He didn't study it to understand what went wrong. He studied it to understand how the system worked, who owned what, why, what gave ownership its power. Then he went home and drew a mouse, named it Mickey, and this time he owned it completely. That mouse became the most valuable entertainment character in history, not because of the drawing, because of the ownership structure behind the drawing. Welles watched this happen. He knew Disney, he understood the industry, and still, every contract Welles signed for the next 40 years followed the same pattern. Creative control to him, ownership to the studio. Not because he was naive, not because he didn't understand. He knew exactly what he was signing, which means the obstacle wasn't knowledge, it was something deeper. The second decision is about identity, not branding. The story you tell yourself about what kind of person you are. Welles decided early and permanently that he was an artist, not an owner, not a builder, an artist. That single word made certain decisions feel impossible, not undesirable. Impossible. The way breathing underwater feels impossible, not because you won't, because you have decided you can't. Disney made the same choice and went further. He called himself a storyteller. He could have stopped there. Instead, he added a second identity, builder, a storyteller who built systems around his stories, an entertainer who built infrastructure around his entertainment. The identity was layered. It left room for ownership. Welles' identity had no room. It was sealed from the inside. Here is what identity lock costs in real numbers. Welles earned over $40 million in his career. He acted in films he described as embarrassing, specifically to fund his own projects. He died with negative net worth, not because he was reckless, because every dollar he earned went back into projects he did not own. He was financing someone else's catalog with his own genius, every single time. But here is the question nobody asks. Disney also had no money. After losing Oswald, he had no studio, no distribution, no capital. How do you build an empire from a drawing and a bankruptcy? Most explanations stop at hard work and vision. That is not what happened. What happened was the third decision, the one most people from zero will never be told about. The third decision: you do not build with your money. You build with the architecture of people who have more to lose than you do. Disney had no capital, so he found people who had capital and needed what he alone could provide. He didn't ask for money. He offered ownership stakes in something they couldn't create themselves. He turned his poverty into leverage. In 1953, Disney wanted to build Disneyland. Every bank refused him, so he went to ABC Television, a struggling network desperate for content. He offered them a stake in the park in exchange for financing. ABC got a real estate investment. Disney got his park built. He didn't beg. He didn't compromise his vision. He found someone whose problem his vision could solve. That is not luck. That is a learnable decision. Welles tried the same approach, repeatedly. He spent 30 years pitching studios, investors, European financiers, but every pitch followed the same structure. Give me the money, I keep the control. Nobody took that deal long-term because it offered nothing to the capital side. Welles was brilliant at creating. He had never learned to structure an offer. He only knew how to make art, not how to make deals. Now, you might be thinking, these are exceptional men, genius level. This does not apply to me. That thought, that specific thought, is the fourth decision, and it is the one that will keep you exactly where you are, because the fourth decision is not about talent. It is about what you believe is available to you, and that belief was installed in you before you were old enough to question it. Psychologists call it psychological distance, the gap between what you can imagine and what you believe is accessible to you. Disney was told his drawings weren't good enough to be professional. He believed otherwise, not because he had evidence, because he decided, before the evidence existed, that the outcome was available to him. That decision came first, the evidence came after. Welles had the opposite problem. He was told so early that he was a genius that he never had to decide. He was discovered, selected, chosen. He never had to build the belief that he could construct something because the system came to him. And when the system stopped coming, he had no internal architecture to replace it. He had talent. He did not have the psychology of a builder. This is the hidden cost of recognition too early. Your identity gets defined by external validation before you build internal conviction. Disney was rejected so many times, he was forced to construct his own belief system. It became structural, foundational. Welles never needed to build that foundation, so when the ground shifted under him, there was nothing underneath. There is one final decision, the one Disney made that Welles could have made at any point in his career and never did. This is the one that explains not just why Disney became rich, but why his wealth compounds 60 years after his death, why it still grows today. This decision requires no talent, no capital, no connections, only a specific way of thinking about time. The fifth decision: build things that produce value while you sleep. Mickey Mouse was drawn in 1928. It generated revenue in 2023. Disneyland was built in 1955. It generated revenue yesterday. Disney built assets requiring no presence to produce value. Welles built performances. Every performance required him present, alive, working. When Welles stopped, everything stopped. When Disney stopped, nothing stopped. In the last decade of his life, Welles recorded wine commercials to fund his films, acted in movies he publicly described as embarrassing, wrote checks he wasn't certain would clear, The man who made the greatest film in history was recording Paul Masson wine advertisements at 70 years old. Not because he was less talented than Disney, because he had never built one single thing that produced value without him. 5 decisions, not 5 habits, not 5 personality traits. 5 specific, learnable, transferable decisions that anyone starting from zero must make, and that almost no one is ever taught to make. The distance between Disney and Welles was not intelligence, not talent, not luck. It was 5 moments of clarity that one man reached and the other never did. Orson Welles died on October 10, 1985, at his typewriter, working on a script he had been trying to produce for 20 years. No studio behind it, no financing confirmed, no distribution deal. He died exactly as he had lived, creating something he did not yet own. His estate, negative net worth. Citizen Kane, the greatest film ever made, belonged to someone else. Most people watching this will recognize themselves somewhere in Welles. Not in his genius, in his structure, in the invisible decisions running underneath everything they do. The 5 decisions are not complicated, they are uncomfortable. And the only difference between your life in 5 years and Welles's last decade is whether you are willing to make them. If something in this video shifted something in you, subscribe. Not for content, for clarity. Blind Spot exists for one reason: to show you the architecture you are living inside, so you can decide whether to stay there.